Okay, today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics on this here RJ Young show, and that is conference realignment with Pat Forde leading the way. And all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related. Sports related, we have a good time. Today, we're going to talk about Pat Forde's column on Monday in Sports Illustrated, where he gave a radical realignment. We're going to talk about what he did, what his reasoning was, and why I agree with him in that it won't work, but it is an interesting concept, especially since we know that realignment is on the docket in the next 5 years with the television contracts coming up once again, but also because 10 years ago, we saw radical realignment. We saw Missouri and Texas A&M and Nebraska all bolt the Big 12 conference. Nebraska for the Big 10, Missouri for the Southeastern Conference, along with Texas A&M. We saw conversation about Oklahoma and Texas headed to the Pac-12. We saw conversation about Oklahoma and Texas headed to the SEC. We have even seen more conversation about the Pac-12 being broken up now at a time when it looked like Larry Scott was going to turn the Pac-12 into a juggernaut. And now we are here once again where nobody is really enthusiastic about the conferences except maybe the Southeastern Conference, who has ruled the 21st century when we're talking about college football. And these things are cyclical, but also 14 teams of the 130 FBS teams are in that league. That's a really big number, especially when you take into account Oklahoma and Texas carry a 10-team conference in the Big 12, 12, of course, in the Pac-12, and then 14 in the Big 10. Like, it's really fascinating, but also who really wants to carry Maryland and Rutgers' dead body? Apparently the Big 10, because they're making nearly $1 billion in television revenue. Ohio State leading the way on that. But let's talk about what Pat Forde did in his realignment piece, and I'm going to go point by point. And I'm going to move the microphone so that the sound doesn't go to crash. And we'll move it back here in just a second. But because I want to read. The radical realignment highlights, as Pat Forde wrote them down, a 120-school ecosystem with 11 current FBS members relegated to FCS and one elevated from that level. Congratulations to North Dakota State. Condolences to UTEP, Texas State, UTSA, South Alabama, Louisiana Monroe, Bowling Green, New Mexico State, San Jose State, Coastal Carolina, Troy, and Liberty. Relegation of elevation can be revisited every 3 seasons. I love that concept. That's a concept that comes from soccer. Relegation also keeps everybody playing for something in a year in which it doesn't always feel like everybody's playing for something. 10 leagues, each with 12 members, each designed to maximize proximity and reduce travel demands and cost. All current conference structures are broken and reassembled. There are no more than 8 Power 5 programs in a single new conference and no fewer than 4. And there are no independents. Yes, Notre Dame is in a conference. Notre Dame fans ain't gonna like that, but who cares about what Notre Dame fans actually like? In football, each school will play a full round-robin schedule plus one non-conference game, no FCS opponents. That's a big one. The non-conference opponent will be locked in for a minimum of 4 seasons before there is an opt-out to schedule someone different. There will be no conference championship game. All 10 conference champions plus 2 at-large teams chosen by a selection committee advance to the expanded college football playoff. This is the part I think many people are going to be interested in. The teams are seeded by the committee. The top 4 receive a first-round bye, while seeds 5 to 8 host seeds 9 to 12 at their home stadiums the first weekend of December. Quarterfinals are played the next week at home stadiums of the 1 and 4, or 1 through 4 seeds. The semifinals and championship game are conducted under the current college football playoff format. I really like this because I like the idea of having playoff games at home stadiums. It also means that we could get a home and home of sorts for OU Texas, which I would really be here for because I like that rivalry to start to look a little bit more like Michigan, Ohio State, not just in product on the field, but I don't always like having to travel to Dallas for a neutral site game at a Cotton Bowl where they don't really care to renovate the stadium to give that game its due. And seeing as they're not going to move it to AT&T Stadium because that's where they play the Big 12 championship game, I'd like to see the home and home come into vogue, but I understand the traditionalists will want to fight me. Next point that he makes, there will still be bowl games for the teams that don't make the college football playoff, just fewer of them, which nobody should mind. The conference will work for basketball and other sports as well. In fact, it will be better for non-revenue sports in terms of travel cost savings. The 230-odd non-FBS programs that are part of the NCAA Division I will remain aligned pretty much where they are and with few exceptions. Now let's get to how he grouped these together, which is basically largely on travel. And he dispensed with really interesting names and just decided to go with stuff that's sort of regional, starting with the Deep South, where you have Central Florida, Florida Atlantic, and Florida International, along with Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, Georgia Tech, Miami, South Florida, and UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham. I don't know that Georgia, Florida State, and Florida are going to want to split revenue with the rest of these teams, but I think that's a point that he's going to address and one that I would address, and one of the reasons why this conference realignment would never work. But the Deep South feels like it could be competitive with the rest of the conference, or with the rest of this country, but let's take a look at the Great Mid-East, as he calls it, which would be the Akron Zips, Louisville, Cincinnati, Indiana, Kent State, Miami of Ohio, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio, Ohio State, Purdue, and Toledo. So we're really just talking about Ohio State and Michigan, and maybe Michigan State in the odd year being worth the damn in that conference. I mean, Cincinnati fans probably feel some kind of way about that, but really we're talking about Ohio State and Michigan being your perennial conference title, contenders. Sounds like a crash. Yeah, real trash conference. Great Midwest, you got Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Iowa, Iowa State, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota State, Western Michigan, and Wisconsin. Totally looks like you could end up with Wisconsin and Iowa, or Wisconsin and North Dakota State. Basically, some combination of Wisconsin in the conference championship game. Again, another trash conference. Mid-American has Illinois. That's what he's calling the conference, Mid-American. Illinois, Kentucky, Louisville. No, okay, let's go all the way back. Who did I miss? I have Great Mid-East, because that's not Louisville. Who is that? It's not Miami of Ohio. Now I got to check. Red Bird. Northern Illinois. Holy crap. Or Illinois State, because it's Huskies, it's Northern Illinois. My goodness, that conference even looks worse now. Goodness. Okay. Going back to the Mid-American. Illinois, Kentucky, Louisville, Marshall, Middle Tennessee, NIU, Northern Illinois, Northwestern, Notre Dame, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Western Kentucky, West Virginia. So Notre Dame, Tennessee, maybe. Yeah, that's about it, man. Louisville, maybe. Like, golly, I hate the Mid-American. Mid-Atlantic, Appalachian State. Is that Charlotte? Clemson, Duke? ECU, North Carolina? North Dakota State? Old Dominion, South Carolina, Virginia, Vodtech, and Wake Forest. Yikes. Pac-12, Cal, Fresno State, Hawaii, Nevada, Oregon, Oregon State, San Diego State, Stanford, UCLA, USC, Washington State. Okay, that's not bad. Fresno State is underrated. Cal, they could be good. Hawaii could be fun. Oregon's good. Oregon State is not. San Diego State, okay. Stanford's good. UCLA, maybe one day. USC, Washington State. Maybe 4 teams in there, You got 4 Power 5s, as we know them today, plus Fresno State. Okay, I'll let the Pac-12 stay. Rocky Mountain, he's got Air Force, Arizona State, Boise State, BYU, Colorado State, New Mexico, UNLV, Utah State, and Wyoming. That's strong through the middle. You could actually have some parity in that conference in the Rocky Mountain. I like that. All right, so now let's move on to Southwest, and it's going to get rough. Baylor, Houston, North Texas, Oklahoma State, Rice, SMU, Texas Christian, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and Tulsa. Holy crap, that's strong. You got Texas and Oklahoma. You got Baylor and TCU. You got SMU and Houston. You got Tech and A&M, and you got Tulsa. Southwest, could be the new SEC in this thing. Sun Belt has Alabama, Arkansas State, Auburn, the Raging Cajuns, ULL, La Tech, LSU, Memphis, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, USM, and Tulane. Sunbelt also looking mighty strong. Mighty strong. Southwest versus Sunbelt for the marbles. Yankees got, where it's just the Yankee Conference. Army, Boston College, Buffalo, UConn, gross. Maryland, UMass, gross. Navy, Penn State, Rutgers, Pitt, Syracuse, Temple. Okay, well, now that we all are working with the same set of facts here, look, he already put it in words that I think make sense here. It says, instead of having to fight its way through an eternal Big Ten roadblock, Ohio State for a playoff bid, Penn State has a clear path. Same with Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and others. So that's really what my take was from all of this, was that he's basically trying to put together conferences that would allow for the college football playoff to make sense. And not just to make sense, but for having good teams in the playoff where each of the seeds, for which, I think it matters, is going to have an opportunity to win the thing. I mean, we're talking about 12 here. You would want to see 12 good teams. And if Miami of Ohio can make it out, or Utah State can make it out, then you'll have that. But he also acknowledges that you'll have the conference rivalries that are kind of torn up. Utah State, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas, Arkansas might actually be going by the wayside, but then maybe you'll get those in non-cons. Look, I enjoy everything that's going on here when talking about conference realignment, because I think that conference realignment is a fun topic. I also think that everybody wants to make their conference stronger, and everybody also wants to have all of the advantages of losing games and none of the weaknesses of winning games. So if you're Boise State and you run the table, you're not going to make the college football playoff as it is, because you don't play in a conference where there are respected members of the college football playoff. It's really second-class citizenship that Boise State lives. The same thing with any group of 5 team, and that's what this realignment really takes into account, while also saying, cool, you guys want an opportunity to play for all the marbles and be one of the 12 best teams in college football? All roads go through a Power 5 foe that we think could make the college football playoff in any given year. Alabama is in a conference. Texas in a conference with Rice. You continue to look around at that thing and you're going, yeah, I could see the logic here. Because in a world where Western Kentucky has to go against Notre Dame, you understand what that means. In a world where Clemson gets to play Appalachian State, I'm here for that. In a world in which Penn State has to play Army and UConn has to play Syracuse and Pitt has to play Buffalo or UMass, I could see that. The Southwest, where Oklahoma gets SMU, where Texas Christian gets A&M, where Texas gets Houston. These are all good things when you're talking about putting together a playoff, right? But that's really what you're up against when you're talking about the playoff and really conference realignment. Are you going to step on the tradition that so many people love about college football? Every game matters, even if they don't, because Oklahoma's got Missouri State on the schedule. And I submit to you, nobody gives a damn about Missouri State being on Oklahoma's schedule. It's a pay game. And that's where the whole argument for every game matters falls apart for me, because as soon as we started going to 12 games and we had these guarantee games get bought in, then that argument goes out. Meanwhile, and Oklahoma can go through a one-loss season in the Big 12, make the college football playoff, in a year where Oregon might have been the better football team in 2019, but they get ousted because they, took an L to an Arizona State that they shouldn't have and to an Auburn that they shouldn't have. It's really that simple. I'm here for conversation about this, right? Because I think this is interesting. I'm glad that Pat Forde took time to put this together. So let me know in the comments below what you think about conference realignment and where you think it should begin and what you look like. And if you are so inclined, you want to write about it, send me an email, rjyoungwrites@gmail.com. If I think that it's worthwhile, I will talk about it right here. All right, that is it for me. Deuces.